to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to do the land acknowledgement now.
Did you want to do roll call quick? Oh, no, I'm sorry. I jumped ahead.
Okay. We recognize that we are presently on the lands of the Chochenyo, Muwekma, Karkin, Ohlone peoples and acknowledge them as the first inhabitants of the land we currently occupy. Mr. Freeze, can I have the roll call?
Yes, Trustee Phillips.
Present.
Trustee Christian.
Present.
All members are present.
Thank you very much. We're going to go to A2, which is approval of the agenda. Mr. Christian, do you have any changes to the agenda?
No, I don't.
Okay. I don't either. So this is the agenda that we will work off of. A3 is approval of the meeting minutes. I did not actually see the minutes. So Mr. Christian, I don't know if you saw them, but I would like to just hold those over to the next meeting. Is that all right with you, sir?
Yes.
Okay. A3 is next meeting. Looks like it's scheduled for June 18th. And B1 is public comment. And this is general public comment on our facilities program, but things that are not actually on the agenda. And then of course, things that are on the agenda will have public comment for those as well. Is there any public comment?
I do not see any hands.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have no public comment, a general public comment. We're gonna go to the first item, which is C1, Citizens Bond Oversight Committee application.
Yes.
And this is Mr. Freeze.
Yes, tonight we have Jason Lindsay as an application for the CBOC for the building trades. He's with us and we'll advance him forward. And then Mrs. Payne will share the questions tonight. Is Mr. Lindsay with us now?
I'm here.
Melissa, do you want to read those for us?
Yes, good afternoon. Can you guys see the questions okay on my screen?
Yes.
Okay, good afternoon, Mr. Lindsay. There's 4 questions that we asked to new applicants to the CBOC. So you see them before you and I'll read them aloud. So question number 1, can you please provide a quick summary of why you chose to apply for the WCCUSD Citizens Bond Oversight Committee?
Sure. So I was asked last year by Bill Whitney of the Contra Costa Building Trades to fill the open seat for the building trades on the board. And I accepted and I applied. And additionally, I was in my current role in my local union, I was elected members of the workers, and some of which happen to live in the school district, and whose tax money is funding these projects. And they entrust me with fiduciary responsibilities in our organization, and they're happy that I'm willing to serve and look after their best interests as far as the oversight.
Terrific, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So for question number 2, and you shared a little bit of this with us, but if there's anything that you'd like to add, Can you briefly outline what in your professional background, work experience, education, or volunteer work would be relevant to the committee and highlight any special or unique qualifications or qualities you feel would contribute to the committee?
Well, I don't know that I have anything special to offer. I don't consider myself special, but I'll go over some of my work history and things. I've been an iron worker for 28 years with the local 378 Oakland local. I've worked in all aspects of our trade. I graduated the apprenticeship in 1998. I am currently a certified welding inspector. I have a California teaching credential from UC Berkeley. I am a certified OSHA instructor. I'm also a Red Cross First Aid CPR instructor. I graduated with distinction from Ivy Tech Community College in Indiana. I'm studying right now, about halfway through, working towards my Bachelor's of Science in Labor and Management Relations. I coached Challenger Little League, which is a division for disabled kids, for 7 years. I just finished this year, last weekend, as a matter of fact, coaching soccer for 6-year-olds, and that was quite challenging in and of itself. I'm currently the director for the ASO, which is a 501c3 nonprofit for 12-step recovery in Contra Costa County. In my current capacity as business agent, some of the things that I do on a regular basis are negotiate contracts, organize members and companies. I apply our labor agreement to resolve labor problems. I file and fight grievances for our members. I fight jurisdictional disputes when other trades encroach on our work. I engage in political relations, and I also negotiate project labor agreements, community workforce training agreements, public or project stabilization agreements. They're all basically the same thing with a lot of different alphabet soup that goes along with them. Yeah, those are some of the things that that I bring to the table. So, you know, I wear many hats.
Well, thank you so much. I have to admit, I'm compelled to say thank you for everything that you do to serve the community. I gotta go sign up to volunteer. So question number 3, the Citizen Bond Oversight Committee meets monthly and has several subcommittees. Is there any particular subcommittee that you would be interested in serving on?
I believe I submitted on my application facilities, and a lot of that, you know, has to do with my background in construction.
Thank you. And the last question today, have you attended any CBOC meetings? If so, what observations might you share? Are you aware of any issues that the committee addressed recently?
Well, yeah, I've been attending every month since October of last year. And the most recent thing that everybody's been working on and talking about, well, among the many, but the one that stands out for me is that you know, the annual report is coming up, and I was asked to help write the facilities master plan portion chapter of it, but I declined. Ultimately, I declined because you know, I'm without being seated, I'm there as an observer, and I didn't think it appropriate that that I help author the part of the chapter without being seated. So as a matter of, you know, principle, I guess, for lack of a better word, I declined from it at this time. But should I be seated, I'd be happy to participate in that process in next year's report.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. That concludes the questions.
Thank you very much. Mr. Christian, do you have any questions?
No, I have no questions.
Okay, I don't either. we're gonna go to public comment on this item. Mr. Gosney, I saw your note, so we're gonna accommodate you. But right now we're only gonna be on this one item. So does anyone have any public comment for this item?
The only hand raised I see is Mr. Gosney's.
Okay, all right. So please, Mr. Gosney, I'm just not clear. Just let him come on. Mr. Gosney, do you have comment for this item or for the general public comment?
I have comments for both.
Okay.
I want to speak on behalf of Jason. He's a person of fine character to begin with, and that's always a positive step. I mean, I think it speaks volumes about the man that for more than 6 months while he was waiting, hoping that his application was going to be processed, and there was never a guarantee of that he still attended all of the meetings. And that's good. And he's been very valuable on some of the comments that he's been providing and the input he's been providing. And on the CBOC, we treat both members and non-members the same. Everybody's invited to sit at the grown-ups table. And so he's been a great participant. And I strongly advocate that you recommend to the full board that he be accepted. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gosney. And like I said, I did see your note. So when we're done with this, we'll do a redo for the other item. Is there any more public comment, staff? No, that's it. Okay. Mr. Christian, can I have this is a little awkward, but let's say it this way, but can I have a motion to recommend Mr. Lindsay to the full
Yes,
board?
yes, I'd like to make a motion to recommend Mr. Lindsay to the board.
Okay, we're not doing it through a second because I'm the only one that's here. We'll have a little discussion. Do you have any comments about this, Mr. Christian?
No.
Okay. The only comment that I have is I want to say, Mr. Lindsay, maybe a month ago, you sent an email to the board about your application. And I just want to say we apologize for the delay in processing it. And thank you for staying in the queue and apparently attending the meetings for all of these months as well. So that's what I wanted to say to you. And with that, we're going to have a vote. Mr. Christian, we'll let you start it off with the vote.
Yes.
Phillips is yes. So that item carries. The recommendation will go to the full board. Again, thank you, Mr. Lindsay, for your time and patience.
Thank you.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go backwards a little bit, and we're going to go back to general public comment. Mr. Gosney was not able to raise his hand in time, but we didn't leave it open that long. But if anybody else wants to make public comment, they're welcome to do so as well. So please raise your hand. Going once, going twice, 3 times, it's gone. Mr. Gosney?
Am I still unmuted?
We
I
can
can
hear.
hear you.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to speak because I said the window was only open for about 4 seconds and I couldn't move the cursor fast enough. For the last time in the foreseeable future, I come to you as the chair of the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee. I've previously spoken to you on the need to pay special attention to the needs and demands of this community for an independent oversight of their bond program. I've also spoken about the need for the board to open their minds to new options that will help to meet those goals. I sent you all a set of options, arguments for embracing them, and legal opinions to validate them. Please read them carefully, and I invite you to speak with me on a personal level so we can find solutions to the problems that may come to face you in the very near future. I encourage the full board to have a discussion about these options. Please understand this distinction between an actual discussion where there is a back and forth dialogue and what we see at your meetings where we're allowed just 60 seconds to speak before you move on. This district may be at an impasse very soon, and this board has the ability to prevent any problems before they actually become problems. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gosney. Were there? Okay, I'm looking at the hands. There's no other hands. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna go to C2, which is site cleaning and maintenance discussion. This is item for good reason that Mr. Christian asked for us to discuss um, in this meeting. So is there some kind of presentation that goes along with this, or are we just going to do a general discussion?
I believe this is just a general discussion, not knowing the nature of the full request.
Okay, Mr. Christian, you want to kick this off? This is on the cleaning and maintenance of the schools.
Yes, thank you. Just kind of just say, you know, I know the maintenance of the schools definitely have to, you know, we have to make sure the upkeep is done at all our school sites, making sure that the job is being done. And I'm going to just speak on behalf of Kennedy, where Kennedy facilities was not very clean. So it has to be some accountability in the picture of making sure that, you know, Kennedy's campus is clean along with other campus in our district is clean. And so when I noticed my visits through there, we had to bring a lot of things to the attention of letting everyone know that Kennedy is not what it should be clean. So that's pretty much, but pretty much all of our facilities in the district should be, you know, nice, clean campuses for all of our students and staff. And that's pretty much.
Thank you. This is a little different because we're kind of doing the presentation or whatnot. But Mr. Christian, do you have any questions for? I mean, you set it up for what it is, but do you have any questions that you want to ask the staff around cleaning, maintenance? I have my own, but you got the floor right now.
Yes. Who checks on to make sure that the sites are clean? Who do we have to go out to check and to see if they're clean?
So Trustee Christian, that's a great question. So currently we have two positions that are assistant coordinators for that. Back in February, one of our assistant coordinators chose to retire, so we were down one position. And so that particular individual that retired had Kennedy on his routes. And not to say that it's an excuse, but that is the oversight for that, is our assistant coordinators for operations. Our coordinator for grounds shares responsibility on the day shift to assist all school sites. But I would say for the Kennedy particularly, we appreciate you bringing it to our attention. We have done site walks. We have talked to staff. We've implemented a program to not only address concerns, but to stay on course, to make sure the staff there is doing their job that they were hired to do. And we are following up on that every day. And just as a general, I would say, you know, for folks that are wondering what the staffing looks like there, Kennedy has 5 custodians plus 1 maintenance worker. We are currently down a permanent position as a maintenance worker, although we do have one of the staff that has the skills for that position and has stepped up and is doing that role. And we have backfilled that 1 vacancy with a sub-custodian. So Kennedy has a full 6 individuals. That includes their supervisor to maintain that facility. I believe there's some questions around grounds, and I just wanted to kind of give you the update as far as the equity goes across the sites. So for Kennedy actually, you know, we serve our sites in multiple ways for our high schools. So Kennedy itself has 1 gardener that's assigned to that campus, and that particular gardener services that campus 2 days a week. I believe Kennedy gets serviced on Mondays and Tuesdays. And to kind of put that in perspective, that Oversight, the Kennedy site is 29 acres. The assistance that we do offer in addition to the gardener takes care of your traditional shrubs and greenery. The larger lawns that are softball fields, baseball fields, any large area that can be mowed with a larger riding mower. We do have an operator, and an operator rotates his schedule from site to site mowing. And in addition to that, for the football field itself and the baseball fields, as far as infield upkeep, we do have a fields worker that actually maintains those particular facilities. So you have an operator that mows the large grass areas, you have a field attendant that maintains the sports fields, and then you have a gardener that maintains all the grounds around the campus. And that is the model that's pretty much applied across all of our high school campuses.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Where are we with filling the missing coordinator position that you spoke about?
Yeah, so that's a conversation that we're entering in with SSA, where we're looking at the best way to. So first, to answer your question, as of Monday, we are backfilling that position with a temporary position. We have interviewed our senior supervisors from our high schools, and we have selected one of our senior supervisors to step up into the acting role. And we are currently going to be working with our bargaining unit to discuss the position that's vacant and how best to bring that back. But we are going to be bringing back a supervisor role in some capacity.
And do you believe that filling that missing coordinator position will help? Because I know it's not just Kennedy. What other schools would fall under that coordinator position that's missing?
So I don't have the particular schools, but basically they were split up 50-50. So you had one individual that was taking schools on the, I guess you could call it the north end of the district, and a coordinator that was taking the schools on the south end of the district.
So, and the coordinator is essentially the person that's supervising all of the maintenance and cleaning.
They are your folks that take care of our night crews. So the supervising custodians and head custodians indirectly report to them during the school year. And then the evening shift reports directly to them. During the school year, typically site custodians report directly to the principal.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is essentially since roughly February, we have not had anybody overseeing maintenance and cleaning for half of our schools, because half is one coordinator. There's two coordinators and they're split it in half. So we haven't had somebody really overseeing maintenance and cleaning for half of the schools since like February.
Well, our one coordinator that's been in place has been sharing that role with our grounds coordinator during this time. So we do have supervision, but I would say that it is not to the level that we had in the past.
Because they were still doing their other jobs as well, right?
Correct.
Okay. And you're saying this position, you're going to temporarily fill it with one of the senior folks that we have, right?
That is correct.
So while this while this person is temporarily filling this position, who's going to do their job?
It is kind of the same process. We're backfilling their position with one of their senior crew members that has opted to step up, and then we'll backfill that custodial position because it's a domino effect with a sub-custodian, so there's no loss of staffing.
And how long will it take for this whole process of backfilling to play out?
We're hoping to get it resolved here in the next month or so we can get the position posted. I would say within the 30 days. It is going to take some conversation with SSA.
But until this happens, we're not going to have proper supervision over the cleaning and maintenance of half of our schools. That's what I'm hearing.
You won't have a permanent position, a permanent person in that position, but you will have a person that's more than capable of providing those services.
in about a month
No, this is a temporary person coming in on Monday.
on Monday.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. I was talking to the principal of Verde, and he was talking about landscaping, um, and that there was supposed to be someone that was going to come out once a week, I think he said, for Verde, and that either has not been happening or it hasn't been happening to his satisfaction. And I'm not trying to put words in his mouth. I'm
Mhm.
definitely paraphrasing what he said. So can you please talk to me about Verde for a minute?
So I'm looking at the schedule right now. So we do have a route for Verde. We have one gardener that's assigned there on Mondays for a full day. Well, actually, I'm sorry, he splits Verde with Nutrition Center, which is very limited landscaping on Mondays.
Is there any kind of um,
So certainly I can look into the issues at Verde and find out if we've had absenteeism or what may have happened that we're not meeting the schedule or not meeting the expectations of the site.
that would be fantastic. And then as far as Kennedy is concerned, I walked through there too, um, and I'm gonna save some of this for discussion later. But what do we need to do to get that school power washed?
But they've been working on that in the afternoons and evenings currently.
Are they? I mean, it's been a couple of weeks since I've been there. What are they? What parts are they working on? What are they? What are they doing?
I don't have that in front of me, but I certainly after the meeting today, I can share with you the schedule and what we're doing on site.
And part of that is power washing that facility.
Part of that is power washing and power washing the gum. We always have to be careful when we try to power wash the upper deck at Kennedy. It's something that we try not to do or not to do very often. And the reason for that is we do have water intrusion issues off of that upper deck. And that's why those windows and screens were originally applied on the upper deck. So any water that gets on that deck, if it's too much that we can't control the drainage on, typically will cause us some problems.
So how do you clean the upper deck?
Well, those areas are usually mopped and cleaned, but we try to limit the amount of water we put on the deck. You know, running water, if you will.
Okay, so not power washing, but mopping.
Yes.
Is mopping the most effective way to clean 60-year-old cement or 50-year-old? Help me understand. It's
Well,
not
it's the only way,
my
well, it's the
thing,
only way
but
you get stains off, right? I mean, if there's spills, whatever, those spills get mopped up. But as I explained before, power washing on the upper deck is problematic for us because of the drainage and the way the upper deck is flashed into the main building.
so what are the water intrusion issues?
So the deck itself is meant to drain off, but when the deck abuts the building, there apparently are some flashing issues that are inherent to the overall design of that campus. These are projects that have been looked at in years past about trying to solve that problem. It becomes very extensive with having to take off stucco, reflash, and or remove the deck and re-pour the decks on the upper floor. So the screening that is currently in place that keeps the driving rains from coming in have been adequate to prevent that. And so, you know, we do not currently have water intrusion problems, but when you do apply water to the deck, it does create issues for us.
Okay, so we have a school site, just so I understand. We have a school site that we cannot properly clean because if we properly clean it, water gets into the classrooms and the walls. Is that what I'm understanding?
There are some issues around that, yes, Trustee Phillips.
Okay,
And
so
it's been
go ahead.
mitigated. I was just saying it's been mitigated by other measures. You know, we do power washing there from time to time, and we will dike the walls to make sure we're not getting water up against the walls, but it is a challenge.
Okay, let me ask you this question, because I've heard like, all these urban
Mhm.
legends and whatnot. But you're talking to me about this second deck. I've heard that there's mold in the walls in various places at that school. And right now you're talking about water intrusion. Is it true that there's mold in the walls at that school?
I am not aware of any mold in the walls. We've abated areas in the past over my tenure here, when we've had water coming into the building that had not been discovered at the time, and it has caused problems. I mean, that's why we are sensitive to the issue around water in the deck. But no, I'm not aware of any mold in the school.
Okay, so are you saying you're not aware of any mold there currently, but you're aware of mold in the walls in the past? Is that what I'm hearing?
That would be a true statement.
Okay.
I
When's
mean,
the
we've had
last
last time I
when's
was
the
aware of it.
when's
It's
the last time you heard about mold? Because you said abated, which means it was there. Abated as in you fixed it. So when's the last time that you heard or knew that there was mold in the walls at Kennedy?
it's hard to put a time frame on it, but I would say it's been at least 6 years.
6 years.
Yeah.
Okay. That's not that long. We're gonna go to public comment. We're gonna go to public comment. Unless Mr. Christian, you have any other questions?
No.
Okay. If we're gonna go to public comment, there's one hand up right now. If anybody else wants to comment on this item, and we're particularly talking about cleaning, maintenance, and landscaping. Um, before we do go to public comment, I do want to ask one other question. Um, for the amount of schools that we have, do we have enough? And I mean, I know there are different classifications, but do we have enough custodians? Do we have enough folks in maintenance? Do we have enough gardeners? Do we actually have enough? Like gardeners, for example, right? Um, do we have enough?
Where we
And
have challenges are this time of year. So I would say, there's seasonal issues. So this time of year, everybody gears up for fire season, right? So what fire season means we have abatement work to do. So what would be a traditional weekly schedule could be probably some of the issues we may see at Verde. Crews are diverted to take down our local wild grasslands, if you will. So property behind Kensington, property that abuts Hercules. So anywhere where we have free range grass that grows, that needs to be abated. And so the same crew has to do that seasonal work. And so it has to fit into the schedule. So there are times when your daily routine work would not get accomplished. And we do a lot of this on overtime. There's just times when you can't get it all done on overtime either. So there are seasonal glitches where we do have increased workload.
so in the seasonal glitch, does that mean like when it starts to rain, there are more weeds? So like as long as it's not raining, we're okay because there's no weeds? I mean, what are you telling me?
No, usually
Just
it's
spit it
associated.
out.
No, it's usually associated with the drier season. So when we come to dry periods, like this year's been a very dry year, so our grasses have come up much sooner than typically we would see as they season to brown, right? So normally we would start cutting weed abatement or bring in our goats, because we do use goats as part of our weed abatement program as well, onto our campus, which would come in late June. But some of those we're trying to bring in earlier because we know that it's been a very dry season. So our grasses have turned early this year.
So like, I'm not so much talking about like wide open space land,
Mhm.
that we own. Right now, I'm really talking about our sites.
Yeah.
So like if I go to Helms, like the last time I was at Helms, there's like weeds growing all up through the concrete and all that stuff. And there are other sites that are like that too. So like if we have enough landscapers, why are
Well,
you go, why is that happening?
you could always use more, right? I mean, and so since we've moved away from using pesticides and herbicides to control weeds, as most all agencies have, so Roundup is no longer an arsenal in our arsenal where we could spray Roundup and help eradicate weeds, and are a pre-emergent that would slow the growth of weeds. We have to combat the weeds as they come, and so the best method is to pull weeds. We also use heat treatment for weeds to kill and sterilize. But it has become challenging over the years as we've moved away from chemical agents that would assist us to manual labor to do that work.
Okay, 2 questions, and then custodians and just like regular maintenance operations, not,
So the
landscape.
custodians is your question as far as staffing for custodians. It was an issue that's been raised within our MOU that we are going to be doing a time study analysis motion study in partnership with our Teamsters to understand how the workload is being affected and if there is equity amongst our sites, and if we do need to add custodians or increase our details. But we do know, it has been a challenge, or would be a challenge in the fall when we go back. We are looking at ways to increase our subpool to help augment the staffing as well.
When is that study going to be done?
I believe it's in coordination with a group at a UCSF. We have our first call for dialogue on this coming up next week.
Please make sure that when the study is done, that you bring it to the facilities committee, and we need to bring it to the full board too. But please make sure that the board knows what's happening around this, and please, after the meeting is over, that detail sheet about all the things that are happening to clean up Kennedy. Please make sure that Mr. Christian gets that
I'll share that.
as well. It'd be great if you could CC me too.
Yep.
So we're going to go to public comment on this item. We got one hand up right now. It's Mr. Gosney. Going once, going twice, gone.
Thank you. Keep in mind that it's been almost a half a century since I walked the halls of Kennedy High School, so my memory may be a little bit hazy, but I seem to recall that being some sort of a cement or concrete deck. And if it is, I'm just wondering if you can't use a mechanized process to try to clean it using a wire brush, circulating a wire brush, similar to what you see on your street sweepers. And that would stir up a little bit of dust, but a simple hand air blower can then push the dust out of the way as well. But that might be a way to clean the concrete as we do in industrial sites, without having to use the water-based options there. Just a thought here. Yeah, but I would like to know if it's not concrete, then I'll just shut up about that. Thanks.
And if I could just comment back, it is a concrete surface. And what I failed to mention is we talked about mopping, it's spot mopping, but we do have walk behind scrubbers, as Don had mentioned, where they apply down the water with a rotating brush and then it's vacuum backed up. So that is another method, and they do have that available at the school site. I believe they do use it on the upper deck. And so I apologize for that miscommunication.
Thank you. We're going to go to board discussion. Mr. Christian, do you have any comments?
Only thing I could just say is, we just want to make sure that we take care of our school sites, and make sure that everything is being done accordingly. And so we just need, we need those to check on those sites to make sure that the job is being done. And if we do that, then there's accountability. That's pretty much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Christian. My only comment is nobody likes to be in a place that's not clean. Kids don't like it. Adults don't like it. Nobody likes that. And more now than ever, we can't afford to have people be in places that are not clean. And then also we pay a lot of money. And when I say we, I don't mean just the district. I mean, folks who are voting for these bonds, we pay a lot of money for these facilities in this community. And they need to be kept up. And I understand that we have staffing issues. But then with that, we need to have honest conversations about what those staffing issues are. Because it's not okay to spend $60 million on a facility and then, have 20 years worth of deferred maintenance, you know, or a school that's supposed to last, you know, 20 days only lasts 9 days because we weren't properly keeping it up. So I get it that we don't have all of the money that we want to have, but when we do start talking about cuts and all of those kind of things, uh, you know, facilities and maintenance, they're oftentimes some of the first things to go. And then they're some of the first things that people complain about because it's like the toilet. You don't think about it until you try to flush it and it doesn't work. You know, you don't think about, you know, your classroom, who's cleaning it. You know, you don't think about who's cutting the weeds, you know, until, you know, you're out there playing on the field, you know, and the kid falls into thorns or gets bit by a gopher, you know, all of those crazy things that happen, you know. So just staff wise, I know that there are a lot of demands that are put on our budget, but we have to have facilities, you know, and we have to take care of the facilities that we have uh, because they are part of learning. Uh, they just are. So please, you know, be honest about our staffing needs, um, and um, and then we do the best that we can do. You know, and Dr. World, I don't see your face, but I see your name. You know, so I'm talking to you too. Um, you know, the staffing needs that we have around, you know, facilities. Please be honest about it, so we can take care of the space that we learn in, that we work in, that we play in, that we eat in. Um, please.
Mhm.
Mr. Christian, thank you very much for putting this item on the agenda. Next, we're going to go to C3, which is annual update on the 2016 Facilities Master Plan. And then also, before we do, those scrub brushes that Mr. Gosney was talking about and Mr. Freeze that you said we have, please make sure they work. Because it looks like it's been mopped, you know. Please make sure that those scrub brushes work and that they're actually being used.
And thank you for your input.
Thank you. So we're going to go to C3.
All right, tonight, Mrs. Mejia Hooper is going to walk us through the annual update for the Facilities Master Plan.
Good afternoon, everybody. We are happy to be here to show our work that's been going forward with the implementation of the 2016 Facilities Master Plan. Whoa, a little fast on the trigger there. We wanted to start a little bit with the original parameters of how the Facility Master Plan was created. It was really defined to use the remaining bond funds of Measure D and E at the time. So there was a pot of money that was left, and there was a realization that there was project needs beyond that pot of money. And so the idea was that there needed to be a prioritization process that allowed us to figure out the highest and best use of that funding, as well as create a long-term plan for the priority school sites. And you can see the priority school sites listed there. There were 21 of them identified, and these were mostly schools that had little to no work done. And then there were a few that had facility projects that had been in planning but had not been completed. So that's how the master plan was begun. In the process of the master plan, the majority of that remaining funding was dedicated towards the rebuild program. There were only 2 schools that were able to be rebuilt anywhere within that money. And so Michelle Obama, formerly Wilson, as well as Lake, were the top 2 in the prioritization list. But beyond that, there was a definite desire that additional projects be completed across the 21 sites to resolve the most pressing issues, especially around seismic needs, as well as just high programmatic needs in some of the other schools. And that's how the critical needs projects were created. So when we look at the project list, you'll see these 2 categories. There was a known gap, though, within the facilities funding to be able to complete all the projects that were identified. And throughout the process, there was a mechanism in which we were hoping to fill that funding gap, which was by state funding as well as project savings. One of the first steps of the facilities master plan implementation was to create new standards. You can see those on our website. We have both the educational specifications as well as the material and product standards that really oversee all of our projects to make sure of that consistency, quality, but also the ability for us to competitively bid a lot of our materials. Beyond that, we had our state funding, which really has come through. The district has been extremely successful in being able to achieve state funding. And that really has filled the gap between what the projects that were identified in the funded list and how much cash was on hand for Measure D and E. So right now there is a cash balance of 14.5 million. This does not include Measure R, and this is outstanding Measure R, which you can kind of see down here in the 2016 quote. So when you see that on the page, you can kind of place yourself in where we are. This is our overall projects list that I was referring to. That was the funded list. So you can see the majority of the projects are these critical needs projects that were specifically identified for each individual site, as well as the 2 replacement projects. The things in yellow and orange have mostly been completed or are in the closeout phases. We have additional projects that are in planning and design, which you can see listed on the right. Those are actively being worked on. So we're going to go through and just do a recap of where each of the projects are. One of the projects that was completed within the last year, so it's part of the annual update, is Michelle Obama. The project page and ribbon cutting video are still posted on the website. That's listed here. We also had the critical needs project for Richmond High School, which was a major project, and it removed the it removed the girls' locker room as well as the small gym, auxiliary gym, because of seismic concerns, and has rebuilt those buildings. The science building, the 2-story building, was also retrofitted to be able to mitigate the seismic concerns at that building, as well as adding an elevator so that it's ADA accessible on the 2nd floor. So that project is also in closeout. Moving on to the projects that we are currently working towards construction is our 2 design build projects, Lake and Riverside. Lake, we have an update for a little bit later in the meeting agenda, so I'll let Melissa cover that. Riverside Elementary is currently in DSA. Here we are doing soil stabilization to stabilize the hillside that's closest to the creek, which will protect our buildings in case of a major earthquake event. There will be other additional design work completed to restore some of the playground areas that we're displacing as we do the soil stabilization. That is currently under contract with another architect. So you will see that coming forward in the future. We are hoping we will be able to construct this summer, but it is dependent on agency approval. We also have legacy projects that were outside of the master plan, but we do want to still report upon them. And so Pinole Valley is a legacy project that is currently out to bid. So the fields portion of it, which is revamping the existing football stadium, as well as building out the softball, baseball combination field, where the old campus is what is out for bid. And so we are looking for those to come in June, and then we will start construction after award. Beyond that, we also have Kennedy and Stage critical needs projects. These critical needs projects are really unique in the fact that they they are setting these campuses up for the rebuild process. And with Measure R still in a question as where as these campuses will fall within that prioritization process, it's really difficult for us to move forward with the scope. We also have a report out on Kennedy that Caliber, who is currently occupying the portables that were planned to house the students after the building 100-200 was taken down, has gotten their funding from the state. And so they are moving forward with their project, which will build out North Campus. So they're anticipated to move out of the portables in fall of 22. Additional projects that are in design, the next 4 projects are all in the SD phase. We have Hercules Middle High Critical Needs Project, which is replacing portables and building science labs on these campus. The original campus has a few science labs, however, they're not as many as is required for the program, and they are also not the correct size for the class sizes that we have today. And so we are looking to replace those with a new building that would land between the 2 campuses and be able to serve both the middle and high school program. And you'll see the ed spec come forward also later on in this meeting. Shannon Elementary, we are replacing a portable that is currently being used as a multi-purpose room. This does not have an adequate kitchen. It does have a tiny stage and a tiny dining area, but it is a significantly older portable that definitely is not to the standards of a multi-purpose room throughout the district. So bringing that into equality is kind of where the Shannon Critical Needs Project came from. It is also in schematic design. Collins and Cameron ended up having a very similar project. Both of them are looking to replace the current heating system with a full-fledged heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system. Air conditioning has definitely been a discussion in the district for some time now. And with COVID, the need for a mechanical ventilation system versus a passive ventilation system is definitely an item that we would like to see across the district. And so these 2 projects are really looking at achieving that. With the addition of a air conditioning, since these campuses are not currently equipped with that, it does have a high electrical need, or a much higher electrical need than their current load allows for. So there will also have to be upgrades to the electrical system to complete these projects. So as I was mentioning, these projects are in schematic design, or what we call SDs. Schematic design is really the earliest phases where we are still coming up with concept plans. We're trying to figure out general blocking diagrams, site location, ideas about what the elevations and heights and utility impacts are. And it's relatively early in the design process, and the district's expenditures into schematic design are relatively low. As you move through design development, construction documents, the architectural fees increase because they are doing significantly more work. There's a little bit of a tabling that happens when we're in DSA, which is the Division of State Architect, who is our permitting agency for most projects. Beyond that, and that DSA time period varies depending on their workload, and has kind of been around 4 to 6 months, just to give you an idea of timing. Then we bid out the projects, and then we have the construction window where the most considerable investment occurs in a project, followed by closeout, which really allows us to get all of the O&M manuals, be able to clean up any punch list items, and be able to get certification through DSA. So that's the overall process of where we are in the project approach for most of our buildings. We have been noticing and experience escalation in construction costs. We are aware that especially wood and metal have become difficult to achieve or more expensive or both. So part of this is kind of blamed on the COVID front as far as disrupting supply chains. However, there are additional construction projects and public works projects going on that are also causing a significant escalation that may or may not be continuing as we go forward towards the completion of these projects. And this is where it leaves us, right? So we have gotten our initial cost estimates in for the Cameron, Collins, Shannon, and Hercules, which is part of the schematic design deliverables, is to have a cost estimate. However, in schematic design, you still have not totally figured out the utility requirements from the street to the building, as well as some other key factors that add to the cost. But we are noticing that the current budgets will not meet what our current project intent is. And so one of the things that we are asking for input and direction on is whether we keep the program intent and adjust the budgets, and we come back to the board and DD when we have a firm idea of what those numbers are going to be, and be able to ask for that adjustment, or do we adjust the scope? And basically on the Collins and Cameron, that's extremely difficult to do because they are an HVAC replacement project, and you could just provide air conditioning in a limited locations, but otherwise it's kind of one of those things, you either do it or you don't do it. For Shannon is almost the same story with the multi-purpose room, because it's very difficult to reduce a multi-purpose room without eliminating major spaces such as a stage or kitchen. With Hercules, we do have options as far as whether we continue to use existing labs versus rebuilding all new labs. There are a few labs on the campus, so there is some ability to reduce that scope. But we are looking for some feedback on how we should move forward with these projects. There is, as I stated earlier, bond cash balance within the Measure D and E because of state funding grants. So we do have additional funding of approximately 14 million that is available without having to touch Measure R. Staff's recommendation is that we continue with the projects to meet the original project intent. As we move forward, we will continue to look for cost-saving measures in the design process, and return to the board with budget adjustments when utilities and other site costs can be more accurately estimated. That concludes the presentation.
The next steps, can you leave those up there?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Christian, you have any questions?
Yeah, thank you, President Phillip. The question I have, how much money do we have that came with Measure R?
Measure R is 575 million. But what we're talking about here is Measure D and E at this point in time for these critical need projects.
Okay, and so with Measure, you said Measure D and Measure E?
Yes.
So with Measure D and Measure E, what are some of the projects that are going to be done with Measure D and E?
So earlier in the presentation, Mrs. Huber walked you through the scope of the critical needs and rebuild projects. So we pretty much walked you through the entire list. You can see the list on the left-hand side of the screen. This is the list of projects that is scheduled to be completed underneath D and E. And you can see that the project, the ROM and the board approved budgets for those.
Right.
So what we're talking about today is just wanting you to know that with the escalation that's occurring within the market today, I think as a parent, anybody that goes out to either buying fuel, go to the lumber yard and try to buy a piece of lumber, costs are through the roof right now. And those costs are being reflected in our projects as we're looking into the future for the build. there's, we hope that the market will turn around and realign and come back down. But as it is today, with the escalations that's occurring and the product shortage due to COVID, tariffs, you name it, all the above, we are seeing costs that are beyond the 5% escalation that was originally built into the master plan back in 2016.
Right.
As we move forward, we just want to make sure that we're keeping the public and the board informed that the budgets on those projects are not robust enough or appear to not be robust enough to cover the entire cost of that particular project. The good news story is that over the life of D&E and the critical needs and projects we've been doing since 2016, that 164 million grew. Our project list was 181 million. We have board approved budgets for every one of our projects. We believe we are, our largest project is really Lake. We believe we are on target and within budget for that Lake project as we work through our DB entity to final award. So that's the good news. And the other is that with the state funding that has come in, we have a cash balance of 14.5 million at this time. And the possibility of more state funding coming in for some of our other applications for CTE grants. So we feel confident that we have the funds available within D&E that would be assigned to those critical need projects in order to cover any budget shortfall that may come as we move forward in the design process. But again, I think it's just important that we want to be as transparent as we can to inform the board and community early on that our budgets are not enough to cover what we have in front of us.
Right. And let me ask this question: Where is Steed Elementary in the mix of this?
So currently, Ellen, if you could go back to Steed. So the budget that has been funded for Steed is $2.9 million, and that's part of the critical needs projects underneath the 2016 master plan. So currently there is, if your question is there a project to rebuild Steed? Currently there is not a project to rebuild Steed, although Steed is within the 19 schools on the priority list that our next presentation on the prioritization committee and the weighting factors that would be applied to the criteria would help determine the landing place for Steed and Kennedy would appear within the modernization new construction underneath Measure R. Did that answer your question? So the scope, though, the $2 million that was set aside underneath D&E, the original intent was to tear down a portion of the L building that you see in red, and then relocate those classrooms and staff into the portable buildings that you see on the right-hand side. But because we do have Measure R and we're pending the prioritization, this project really wants to see the outcome of that prioritization list to see where Steed would land before we make any more decisions on how to move forward or the best pathway forward for the Steed project.
Okay, and then the other question I have: who makes the decision on how all this is being done?
Well, ultimately, what we're bringing before the board, bring before you tonight, and then to the board next week would be the prioritization list, our criteria, if you will, and the weighting factors. So staff is bringing that forward. We're asking the board to approve it. Once that's approved, the weighting factors will be applied to the criteria, and that will drive a list or an order list, if you will, of the 19 priority sites. And then we'll bring that back to the board for approval.
Okay, that's all the question I have for right now.
Thank you very much. So I was trying to take notes, but it's Hercules, Shannon, and what was the other school?
Collins and Cameron.
Collins and Cameron. Okay, and what you're saying is that we don't have, the project exceeds the board approved budget, including the 5% that was built in for escalation. And you guys want feedback or input as to whether the the scope of the work needs to be reduced, or whether you guys should just go forward and take the money from somewhere else. Is that it?
Well, it's not taking the money from somewhere else, because what we're talking about is that $14.5 million is not assigned. It's actually it's the fund balance, if you will. So it's the dollars that have fallen out of the program that are outside of the critical needs projects. So all the critical needs projects have been funded to the budgets that were originally approved by the board. And so originally that added up to $181 million. We've exceeded that $181 million with state money that has been returned to us for CTE grants, modernization and new construction funds that have come into the district. So, so we're not taking from another project. We would actually be taken from the fund balance.
Okay, but what I recall having happened in the past is that if projects come in under that money's returned to the fund balance, right?
That is correct. And so we've seen that happen with, now I'm drawing a loss, but we do have money returned to the project balance today as well. But
There was
yes,
some money that came back from Richmond, for example, that went back to the fund balance.
yes,
Okay, so this money that is unassigned, is this money that was assigned to another school that went back to the fund balance?
some of it is, but I would say a very small percentage of that, and we could get you that exact number.
Isn't most of it, when you get that state match that comes after the fact, that goes into the balance too? And so you end up with excess dollars where you start with 100 million for the project. If you get reimbursed 10 million, you now have 110 million where you started with just 100.
Right. And most recently, the largest increase of this fund balance was the $23.5 million we received back from the Pinole Valley High School modernization project.
Is there, outside of Hercules, Shannon, Collins, and Cameron, are there any other projects that you foresee going over?
At this time, no.
What do you mean by at this time?
Well, right now, these are the projects in front of us. These are the last projects in the design phase for the critical needs projects. So if we went back to that list, the only ones that we hadn't initiated work on prior were Kennedy and Stage. So if we kind of went down the list, Cameron, we're working on, that's what we're talking about tonight. Chavez, we returned fund balance. Collins, we're working on. Crespi, we've completed, and I believe we returned some fund balance. Fairmont, we're virtually done with that. There is no other projects assigned to it at the moment. Grant was completed. Harmon Knowles was completed. That was a demolition of the buildings that were on there. Hercules Middle and High School are projects that we brought forward to you tonight to discuss. Highland project has been complete. There's currently some fund balance there that we haven't returned yet because we were talking about possibly some additional work that needed to be done at Highland. Kennedy is a project that we have not started, but it's $12 million for the demolition of the classroom wing and relocation of the portables. Lake, we are in negotiations, and we believe that project is going to come in on budget. And why I say this time, our estimates are within scope and budget. So Ohlone has been completed. Alinda has been completed. Richmond High, we're completing right now. Riverside, our budget is assigned, and we believe there may be some fund balance coming back as well. Shannon,
So stop for a second. So Richmond High, so they just got a new gym, right?
Yes.
And that gym has a weight room, right? Yeah. And it has, I mean, it's not a gym, I'm gonna call it a facility, right? So that facility has a gym, it has a weight room, it has
dance room.
A dance room, right? Is that gym, so we return fund balance on Richmond High, for example, is that gym at Richmond High School, the weight room, is it as big as it was supposed to be?
It matches the
So I'm sorry, I just wanted to jump in really quickly from the financial side. the column that you see that says total BOE adjustment, that represents any budget change in the 2016 facilities master plan. So no bond dollars have been returned to the fund balance from the 2016 facilities master plan for Richmond. What we did, if you look, is we increased the budget by 5.9 million, and we haven't closed it. So I just wanted to provide a little bit of that clarity. And then to further answer your question, the previous slide, we identified that the total amount of project budget savings that we've returned to fund balance since October of 2016 is 8.7 million. And so you can see here that we've increased from the 181 million by 6.2 million. And so a lot of those project savings also come from legacy projects. And so kind of the intent of the master plan was some are over and some are under. But I just wanted to be clear on that point.
Yeah, Richmond was over budget
Yes.
by 5.9, and there was a change made to increase that budget to complete that project.
Correct.
Something got returned for Richmond, because I remember arguing, and this
well-
might be before you came, but because I remember arguing that they should be able to keep the money for something else, and everybody else said no. So something got returned for that school.
I think if you're talking about years past,
Yes.
so there was, prior to the master plan, there would have been.
No, I'm saying since I've been on the board.
Yeah, they funded a lot of old state matches, got funded several years ago. And so you probably had a previous Richmond project of eligibility that was funded at that time as a reimbursement.
Actually, what I'd say is that we have decreased the contract to Lathrop Construction. We've decreased the overall contingency in their contract and returned that to the bottom line of the school site, or to the project budget, but not back to the fund balance. I think that's what you're referring to. I believe
Okay.
we returned 300,000. We took it out of their contract and put it back to the fund balance.
To the project budget.
To the project budget.
And that's the challenge, is you have a project budget and then you have the overall program budget. And when you have the ins and outs, it gets a little more challenging. The best way to really think about this is that 23 million that came from Pinole, that was money that was dropped into the bottom line that we hadn't planned on. And that money covers all of these overages, and their net is what the balance is that Lewis is talking about now, taking that balance to adjust the budgets for the remaining critical needs projects so that they're covered. Then that wipes out all cash, which is why we're considering the timing of a new issuance of Measure R to make sure cash is there as we go forward.
So with the two projects that haven't started yet, and that's Kennedy and Steege, and I understand why they haven't started yet, but what's to say, but they have money out of D&E as well. So what's to say that they don't go over? What happens if they go over?
That's what you have to be prepared for.
Yeah, you have to be prepared for that if that were to occur. And you know, if those projects do not rise on the list for new construction, and the decision was to continue with the scope of work of the critical needs project, then there would be a possibility that the budgets may not be robust enough as we look at escalation today.
And that's why Lewis always has he always has a contingency in every project budget. And then from my side, I make sure that we maintain a balance, almost a reserve, to protect against a double hit where they blow through the contingency and something else happens that is unforeseen. You always want to have a little extra unassigned in your fund, in your balance, to ensure every project is completed.
So the other thing I would just say very quickly, and I was saving it for the big finish of the financial reports, but at the last state allocation board meeting, we were allocated another 4.7 million. And so we need to complete the administrative forms for that. But we believe that the dollars that we have aggressively pursued from the state will cover the remaining projects of the 2016 facilities master plan, and that we will have the dollars to complete the intent of the plan. So just wanted to add that, because that number is not reflected yet, because that action just took place.
But that cash will come in this year.
Is there a reason why we cannot wait to see where Stige and Kennedy fall in the master plan? And the reason why I'm saying that is because they're real or imagined, and I think it's a little bit of both. There is this history, this story of funds being used or taken that should be used in one site, or sites going over for whatever the reason is, and then schools and actually these two schools in particular not being able to get the things that they need because they're always waiting while other people's budgets are getting increased. And I do think that has happened. So is there a way for us, is there a reason that we cannot wait to see where these schools fall on the
I think today we're not asking to increase the budgets, but we're just informing the board that there are constraints. Our estimates are showing that we will not have the available budget to build them, but our desire is to move forward with design, and we learn more as we move through design. The more we know and the more we get on paper and closer we get to construction documents, the better our numbers get as far as estimates go.
And I think I would add to that you want to have two layers, because you just talked about concern that other dollars will take away from the needs of those schools. So you want to maintain on the critical needs right now a budget to ensure that they're going to get worked on. But simultaneously, what you're saying is very accurate. You don't want to go and spend money on something. For example, if we're going to tear down the front building of Kennedy, you don't want to go spend $800,000 to modernize the front building of Kennedy right now. So it's a logic base, but you want to have the budget set aside, guaranteed that you're going to be demolishing that building. So it's two different pieces. You're correct. You want to wait, but you also want to ensure that it's in and prepared for. So it's both at the same time.
The board approved the budget for both Kennedy and Stige. So that budget is already assigned and allocated to those projects, and that project budget is there.
The budget is not the issue. You're telling me that everything costs more and that the pool of money to pay for all of these things is rapidly diminishing and that everything is costing more. So if there is, if it costs more to finish Hercules, Shannon, Collins, and Cameron, then logically it will cost more to finish Kennedy Critical Needs Project and Stige as well.
So can you go to the bottom line of what the balance is for a second? Because I think it might help to illustrate what you're talking about. So if you look right now, there's at the bottom, that's how much money has not been designated for use. So those dollars are available for each of those projects you just mentioned. If we then say, okay, we are going to designate this much here, this much there, this much there, that cash balance will now go down to a certain number because you've covered all your overages. Now that's done, then you know, okay, we have this much margin of error. Then I come and say, guess what? We need to sell Measure R now so that we're protected to start those other critical needs. And we maintain a balanced cash approach so that we can fulfill each project that we start and not get caught with escalation where we don't have the dollars available.
At this point in time, the estimates are not showing that we're going to spend all 14 million either.
Yeah.
So that's the other piece.
The estimates, while they're over our budget, but they're not significantly over our budget where we would be looking to take all the fund balance.
Right.
Okay, I don't even know where we are right now. We're on questions, right? So we're gonna do public comment, and then I'll say what I have to say. Mr. Christian, you say what you gotta say, but we're gonna do public comment. So if you are out there in TV land and going once, going twice, gone.
So we do have public comment. We have one, Mr. Gosney.
Thank you. Yeah, going back about 10, 12 minutes, so where we were talking about the potentials for cost overruns, primarily being because of the increased cost of some of the materials, construction materials, lumber and steel in particular. And please correct me if I'm misinterpreting any of this, Louis. But with the Kennedy project, that is almost entirely demolition. You're not really rebuilding anything. So you're not really using a lot of lumber or steel on there. And even on Stige, if I understood it correctly, you were demolishing part of the L building. I didn't see that part of the critical needs project was to rebuild it at this time. So again, no lumber or no steel to speak of. So the potential for cost overruns on those is not nearly as high as some of the other projects, the critical needs projects, where you are actually using lumber and steel. Now, if we go into Measure R and we start talking about rebuilding that front building or repairing the entire Kennedy High School or rebuilding Stige, which I sure hope we do, then that's a different story. But we're still just talking about critical needs projects right now, if I'm not mistaken. Am I right? Thank you.
Is that the only comment?
Yes.
Mr. Freeze, go ahead and respond to that, please.
Oh, so I would say that Mr. Gosney is correct. The scope of the work of the critical needs is mostly demolition work. The work that would remain would be the reconfiguration, as in Kennedy would be the reconfiguration of the portables to accommodate classrooms, right? New office, all those things that go along with the 100, 200 building there, new administration, but they would be modified to fit into the portables that are on the existing campus that Caliber is using. Now, there may be the need to purchase some portables or modify in order to accommodate what an office might be, but the traditional classroom would be the portables that are there.
Okay. Mr. Christian, you got any comments?
Yes, thank you. Just only a few, just looking at, how long, Kennedy High School or Stage. And then when you talk about equity, for high school students, Kennedy cannot ring out with equity, same as the other schools are, that has been rebuilt. So, and it's a lot. Kennedy, to know the history of Kennedy, it was on the list way back and it was taken off way back in the day. And it's now it's just dangling out there that it might not never be done. But when you look at equity, those students there, they ask the same question, why do we don't have like the other schools? So, I'm just kind of, wondering, where is Kennedy? Is it at the 5th, the 6th, the 7th, the 8th, 10th, 12th on the list? Where is it? That's it.
Do you want me to respond?
Go ahead,
Yeah.
but go ahead. But also, I don't know if Mr. Christian has it, but if you could send him a copy of the current master plan with the list, so he can see that and have it for his own records. But go ahead. Matter of fact, if you could send all the board members that in case they don't have it.
It's going out tomorrow, so they'll have it as part of the Friday. But just in response to equity dollars that have been spent, and looking at Kennedy itself, I believe through the life of the bond program, it has had about $33 million invested of bond dollars into that campus over the life of the program, just as a side note. So they have received some bonds dollars over the life. But we can certainly forward the master plan so you can see where it currently lies within the 2016 listing. And that's what we're hoping to modify and change based upon the criteria and the weighting factors.
Okay, thank you.
So for me, I have, and when I say I don't mean like I literally own it, but like I know that I have half a weight room or a quarter of a weight room at Richmond High School. In comparison to what was originally supposed to go there. And there is this thought and belief, and I think it is based in some reality. I think some of it may not be accurate, but I think it is based in some reality that some places are getting left behind. And I don't want to be part of that. And even what I'm hearing now with like the critical needs projects for Kennedy, right, is to tear down a building. Not to rebuild a building, not to, put up a wing, it's to tear down a building and have the kids go into the portables where caliber is. But that's not what I'm hearing at these other places. And I don't even know how you have like a critical needs project if the project is to tear down the main wing and to put the kids in the portables, but the second half of the project should be to rebuild it. So they're not in portables for the next however long. Now, hopefully, prayerfully, when we go to the next item and, and we do the prioritization and that goes to the board and the board approves that and that list comes out, that Kennedy, that Richmond, that they fall where they need to fall on that list, and then this is not an issue. But until I know that they fell where they're supposed to fall on that list, I need to wait. I mean, and it could go to the whole board, but I mean, if you're asking for feedback from me, like if there is any possibility that some of the schools that we're talking about right now will not be able to get what they need as far as their facilities are concerned, I'm not recommending nothing. So that's where I am. Mr. Christian, I don't know, because they were asking, then that little thing, it says staff recommendation. That's your recommendation, and I respect that. I'm not recommending that to the board. I like I said, you guys do that prioritization, the criteria, you do your list, and we'll see where it come out, and then it's another conversation. But right now, I can't do anything with it. Mr. Christian, you got any comments? Additional comments?
No, I don't have any additional. Pretty much it's been said. And well, only thing I just say is, the board has, will have to make the final decision. So that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. All right, guys, we're gonna go to C4.
Mrs. Mejia Hooper, she'll give us the update on Measure R update.
All right, so this is looking at the prioritization moving on into Measure R. So while we were updating on the implementation of the 2016 master plan in the previous presentation, this is really looking forward into what the prioritization could be for the Measure R dollars and beyond. Back in 2016, there was an extensive process that went through creating a needs list, having a prioritization committee set up criteria, which created the overall prioritization list, as well as other master plan options that was applied, and the projects were defined. And so that's what we did before. We did have a 15-member committee that created this list of prioritization criteria. It originally considered 25 different options for criterion that came out of the site and community meetings. However, it was whittled down to this list. Now in 2021, we did a similar process where we had a community survey with over 2,000 responses that asked, what do you think, how important do you think the individual criterion from 2016 were? And are there additional criteria that you would like us to consider? We took forward 30 additional criteria to the new prioritization committee to say, here's what we had in 2016. Here's 30 additional things to consider. The committee itself added 2 more beyond that. And out of these, what moves forward? What should be applied to our 2020 at the time, now 2021 process? And through that, you can see here the membership of that committee. The results of that are listed on this slide. This was the recommendation that came forward from the prioritization committee after 5 committee meetings. When that was considered by the facility committee, adjustments were made, and there's a group of criterion that were still applied to the 19 schools, but then some of the criteria that was suggested got shifted over to an all district school sites component because they really applied across all schools instead of just being dedicated to the 19 schools. From there, staff was asked to weight the criteria. There was an overall understanding that we should have a framework to how the weighting is created. And so the framework that staff is recommending is that for the highest weight, they should be health and safety requirements. For the mid-level weight, it should be needs that require larger amounts of change to fix or provide equity. And then we have the basic criteria weight of 1. These weights were then looked at on each criterion of what kind of criterion that was and where that falls in that structure of how to weight. And so you'll see here that we have 2s, 3s, and 1s, depending on which criterion it is and what the metric is and how it applies to either health and safety, equity, or large change versus small change. So this is what we are asking to be moved forward to the full board as the proposed weighting criteria and metric. As far as how the master plan rolls forward post that adoption by the board. So if the board so chooses or makes whatever adjustments that it makes to the criteria, metrics, and weighting, once we have adoption of a criteria, we will apply it to the 19 sites, which then will give us a priority list for those priority sites. And it will tell us the order that the rebuild projects would like to fall on. In addition to that need, though, that's one of the needs lists, right? On top of that, we have other needs. We have the district-wide initiatives of air quality and thermal comfort, as well as technology. We also have student housing needs for accommodating new programs and addressing areas which are over capacities. So these other needs need to be combined together to create options. And once the options are selected by the board, an implementation plan can be adopted. So returning to the previous slide, just to wrap this up, it's the primary item that we would like this facility to move forward to the full board is the proposed criteria, metrics, and weight to be able to prioritize the 19 priority sites, which includes Kennedy.
And this is what we went over where I asked you a million questions last month, right?
That is correct.
Like it, don't do it again. Okay.
Hey, I'm here I'm here for anything.
Not gonna do it again. Mr. Christian, do you have any questions?
No, I have no more questions.
Okay. I don't have any questions either. So we're gonna go to public comment. Okay, so going once, going twice.
Oh, we got a hand. Two
Okay, oh, we
hands.
got a few.
Yep.
3, 2. Okay, let's go.
All right. So that's it. 2 hands. Lorraine Humes, would you please unmute?
I just wanted to clarify something for Mr. Christensen. Now, on the facility master plan, you had schools that have been done so far, and it's mostly the critical needs that have been done. You now have 21 schools with 2 adult schools, and you're past the critical needs. So all these schools need replacement or modernization or partial replacement. So now you're getting to the expensive stuff. The Kennedy School on this list is listed as $110 million. And also this list of 21 schools, these are all unfunded. You're hoping to get money for them from Proposition R, but the total amount for these schools to be replaced, modernized or whatever comes to $1.1 billion. Your Proposition R is for $575 million. So there are going to be schools on that list that are not going to be done until your next bond proposal. So I just wanted to give you an overview of what is to come. That's all.
Okay. And we also have Mr. Jose De Leon. Please unmute.
Good afternoon, facilities committee. I'm just calling to let you know how well received the small amount of construction that happened at Richmond High School. And it left the question to the students and to the staff is what's next? What could uplift our community more than a new building, just like it did for De Anza, just like it did for El Cerrito? And the question that the students ask me all the time is, why are we always forgotten or left to the last? So I just want to bring that point back around. I have to answer them as, you need to come to the meetings, you need to make yourself be heard. But there is a big feeling that Richmond is being left to the last, especially when we go and see these other beautiful schools that are being built. The 1,500 plus students in this community do deserve more. Thank you.
That was our last public comment.
Thank you very much. So just so I'm clear, we are making a recommendation to the full board on the prioritization. That's what we're doing right now, right?
Yes.
Or what are we doing right? That's what we're doing.
If I could jump in, and then I know
Yeah.
Lois will jump in too. There's 3 different pieces that really need to be connected. What you're doing with this prioritization is we've identified the criteria that was essential, that's changed in the world that we have right now. to make sure that we're making the right considerations. And that was what we did in that long meeting previously, to ensure that this criteria is appropriately addressing the needs of the community. Both you and Trustee Christian have expressed some very specific hopes and desires for the projects. The only way we can get there is by having criteria that clearly is measurable to then go and scope them all out. Lorraine Humes actually made a very good comment. There's not enough money to do every project we need at every school. That's why you continually have to do bonds, but you have to do them in the right order for the right projects. And this criteria is based on now. What is critical now? By recommending it, we'll then come back with a second requirement to this committee, which will be the actual list, where you don't do the list first, where you say, I want this one there, I want that one there. The criteria has to be done pure and clean, so there's no bias to it. Just like the previous item, all that we were talking about there is keep funds allocated for those pieces. They'll then get folded in with the criteria we're doing. So we don't want to lose any of the momentum. Very likely, many of the things that all of the people are talking about will rise in priority. There will be some that'll be equal, and the board will then determine, okay, we've got two that are right there at the same. Which one do we do first? Which one do we do second? And then we phase the funding. And then you'll come to me and say, how much money can I get today from Measure R? And when can you get the next allocation? And we'll build it out. So this is a critical, important piece for the board to say yes on the criteria. So as soon as you do that, Ellen gets her slide rule and her calculator out, and she goes through, and the team will map out every school will be evaluated, and then we'll come back with the real list, which is what everyone wants. Everyone wants that list, and we will then be off and running. So this is that big moment that tremendous work has been done to update it to today. I think I'm hopefully explaining what we're talking about. This is actually very exciting.
Yeah, it's exciting, like sticking your hand in something and don't know you're gonna get bit.
Hello?
But you're not supposed to know what the answer is going to
Yeah.
be. You have to do the criteria
I'm here for
and
Yeah.
not know what the result's going to be.
That's
That's
right. It's the
the fun of it.
criteria and the weighting factor as they are applied to each other.
So we'll have a little bit of discussion or as much as we need, but first I'm gonna have a motion. So Mr. Christian, can I have a motion that we move this forward to the full board, the criteria?
Yes, recommend that it go to the full board.
Okay. And so Mr. Christian, you got any discussion that you want to say?
Yes, I see the list that I received, and I'm saying, wow, yeah, Kennedy's way down, number 13 on the list.
Don't look at that list, sir. That
Wow.
list is 6 years. That's what we're saying. We now have criteria for today based on what's important today. That list is not in existence. Put it in the trash and look at the criteria that's on the board and ask yourself, is that going to address what I'm concerned about?
So just two things. And then I'm gonna have staff step back and Mr. Christian, you can make whatever comments that you want. So the process that we're doing is right now, there's really two bites at this apple, essentially, maybe three. But so the first one is this, right? Is this establish the criteria that we weight. And then the second one is after this gets weighted, then what's gonna happen is they're gonna generate a list, a new list, not the one you're looking at, a new list. We'll see that too. And then that will go to the full board as well. So for the full board, there's at least two bites. For us, there's kind of like four, right? Because we're seeing it in facilities before it goes. I mean, everybody can see because it's a public meeting. But yeah, I mean, and that the fact that it's 13 on that old list is the hesitancy that you heard from me in the other item. But hopefully, prayerfully, I believe it will be somewhere different under the new criteria. But but I'm gonna let staff back up, and I'm gonna shut up, and then Mr. Christian, whatever comments you have, you're gonna make your comments.
Pretty much, I mean, pretty much it's been said. You know, the rest got to go to the board. So pretty much it's been said.
Okay. I don't have any comments. I look forward to seeing a draft list, emphasis on draft, come out of this. Big capital D on that draft. And so that said, we're gonna have a vote. So Mr. Christian on the vote.
Yes.
And Phillips, yes. Okay, so it carries on. Staff, it's 5 o'clock now. I'm looking at the items we have left. We have C5, C6, C7, and C8. And I'm looking at all of those. Are all of these coming to the board?
Let's see. So C6 is coming to the board, yes. C7 is coming to the board. And this is just a return of dollars from the construction contract. The PMP is coming to the board. The reports are not C9. That's an informational item.
Okay, so C6 is coming, and say it again, C7?
C7, it can be, I'd have to check the agenda, but I believe it's a consent item to return dollars back from the contract.
So which ones do we, because we're not gonna not vote to have the money come back. So which ones do we need to do in here
6, 7, and 8,
tonight?
if my staff, is that correct?
So I believe C7 and C8 are scheduled for May 19th. And C6 and C5 are scheduled ideally for June 9th. And so they would potentially go before the next facilities committee meeting. So just in full disclosure, I believe it's just C7 and C8 and the item we just reviewed that's prepared for the 19th.
So let's do C7 and C8 and then see how we're doing on time. And I won't ask that many questions. And then maybe we'll be able to slip in the other ones. Okay.
So C7 is very quick. So C7 is to return $733,000 back to the project balance from Michelle Obama. We had $2.6 million in contingency on that project. This is a project that we actually had increased the contract on to cover unforeseen soils, and I believe we increased it by $1.8 million, if I recall that number. But the good news is, as we wrapped this project up, we did not expend that contingency that we thought could be a problem for us, and so we are returning $733,000 back. You're muted.
Okay. I'm sorry, give me 1 second. Can you give me can I just take a 2-minute break, please?
Sure.
Okay. Mr. Christian?
He might have taken the 2-minute break.
That's right. I said, I just said 2 minutes. Okay. All right. Wait a couple of minutes. And I should have asked, he might not be able to stay later. So some of what we do might right now just might be informational, so it gets out. Because there's nothing that you guys really need any direction from us on right now anyway, right? It's just
Informational.
okay. Okay. So we do need to we are gonna need to end. Um so C5, 6, 7, and 8, if we do need to take these up before I guess the June 9th meeting, I think that's what it was, then we could work on just scheduling something else if you guys don't mind for these items. They'll probably go quickly, right?
I believe that CA is currently drafted on the board agenda for next week. So if we want to pull that item, we would bring it back in June. Or I would have it taken off.
It's not. Is it on the consent calendar?
Melissa?
Yes, I believe it is.
And we can bring it back.
Yeah, we're starting to get behind though. I'll talk to you guys offline. Anyway, okay, so we need to log off.
We also
Mr.
have the
Christian.
budget meeting. You could add anything next Friday as quick items in budget committee if
Okay.
something needs to be reviewed.
Okay, so if there's something that we have to, let me talk to Mr. Christian too, but if there's something that we have to get done and we don't have the opportunity to do that, maybe that's another option too. But whatever we have to get done, we'll get done. But Mr. Christian is not able to stay on, so we're gonna log off. But most of the work that we needed, you really needed from us this evening. You got it, right?
Yes, we got it.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody. It's 5:08. You all enjoy your weekend, okay?
So before you actually hang up,
yeah.
it's not part of the meeting. The next meeting is scheduled for the 18th, which is a Friday. The district's closed. It's something we may want to look at trying to find another date offline for the next facilities meeting in June.
Well, that might be the answer right there. We have to reschedule anyway. We could just reschedule, maybe before the 9th.
Yeah, so that was just something that needs to be changed.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Thank you, everybody. You all have a good evening. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.